Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me on Moonlight Legends, where we discuss everything supernatural. I am your host, Damian Knoll. I apologize if I don't sound the clearest. We've been having some electrical storms sprout up around the radio station lately, so I hope all of you out there are safe, but the forecast reports that the weather should be clearing up here soon. With that cleared up, on to our first story. Tonight, I want to talk to you about lighthouses. They are something we rarely give a second thought to, and that's not because they aren't important. They have saved countless amount of sailors. They have always been there when we needed them. They are a structure that represents so much to the world. Lighthouses are inherently isolated from the rest of the world. And for the ones who have taken up the important duty to run a lighthouse, it can be easy for them to forget that the rest of the world even exists. Tending to the same chores that need to be done each day can become a little maddening after a long period of time. And no one knew this better than two men named Flynn Murphy and Patrick Walsh. On a small island off the coast of Ireland was a newly built lighthouse. Two men were trained on how to run a lighthouse and how to deal with harsh weather were hired. Both of these men had wives and children who lived on the mainland while they lived in the small one-room lighthouse. During the trips back to the mainland for supplies, they were often found at a pub arguing. Flynn and Patrick hated each other. Many witnesses would speak of how they would leave in the fear of a fight breaking out, but it never did. The lighthouse's second winter was brutal. This kind of weather prevented them from traveling back to get supplies. Local ships tried on multiple occasions to send over supplies, but each time it proved to be too risky and they would turn back. For the two men, the winter must have felt like it would never end. Their bickering never stopped, but it also never went any further. It was just that, bickering. Only about halfway through the winter, Patrick reportedly became ill. Flynn would later describe to authorities that it seemed to come out of nowhere. One of the ways they passed these long days was with the books that they brought with them, as well as books that were given to them by passersby. Flynn told of how Patrick started to become obsessed with one particular book that Flynn had never seen before. That his obsession brought out a complete personality change. At first, Flynn was grateful for it because the arguing between the two stopped, for a time. The obsession eventually went away, but then came the determination to leave the island. The boat these men had for leaving the island was far from equipped to handle the rough waves that the storms had created, and Flynn knew that. So every time Patrick tried to leave, Flynn stopped him. Many were shocked to hear that he would try and save Patrick, knowing the hatred the men had for each other. But some only thought it was because he didn't want to become stranded on the island with no way off once the weather finally started to calm down. Whatever the reason was, it was in vain, because soon after the illness took Patrick's life. Flynn wouldn't speak much about how he died or what happened afterward, but whatever did happen seemed to have frightened him. At the end of the winter, he took his family and moved as far as he could, never to be seen again. Tonight's featured song is Pixel Flight by Ray Smith. Welcome back. You were listening to Moonlight Legends, and that last song was Pixel Flight by Ray Smith. The last story for the night takes place in the early 1800s. Nestled in the side of a cliff overlooking the ocean, the town of Primora became a very popular tourist town. Originally, the town was popular because of its location, but one day, a family-owned business sprouted up and quickly became known for its amazing food. Shortly after every restaurant in the town was considered the best in the country. It attracted people from all walks of life. However, with every positive in life, there is also a negative. Because of the hustle and bustle of this very popular town, the number of missing persons rose significantly. As years went on, missing person flyers covered all the buildings within the town by desperate family members. These same family members began to notice a trend. The only people that went missing were tourists. At first, the local police worked round the clock in attempts to find the missing people. But after a while, they got so overwhelmed by the amount that they just seemed to
give up.
The whole town seemed to
Just accept it.
move on. Nearly 2 decades go by, and it continued with no progress of what happened to the missing people or who was doing it. It wasn't until the popularity of the town began to die away when answers finally came. Rumors began to circulate that deeper into the cliffside was an intricate tunnel system that was used to take these people. Town officials were quick to remark that these were just stories that the children of the townsfolk made up. This caught the attention of a private investigator that arrived to the town as soon as they heard of it. After questioning members of the town, the investigator began to suspect that the whole town knew more than what they were leading on. Quietly, the investigator looked for any kind of entrance further into the cliff, and after noticing the increase of missing persons after a particular family-owned business opened up, that was the first place to look. The investigator snuck in and found a locked hatch in the ground. After picklocking it and following the newly revealed tunnel, the investigators stumbled upon a horror show. It was revealed that the people who went missing had been used to make the food that everyone enjoyed while their blood was turned into their specialty wine. The investigator was able to save a few of the most recent missing, but for those hundreds before, some of their remains could be found littered on the floor. Authorities outside of this town charged all residents with these crimes. Many admitted how they were all aware of this going on, and even how they helped take the people. The town has now since been long abandoned, and some explorers who have gone to this town have reported hearing voices calling out, and shadows that seem to be following them everywhere they went. And on the note of institutionalized cannibalism, that was our last story of the night. Thanks everyone for tuning in to Moonlight Legends. I have been your host, Damian Knoll. Don't always trust what's on the menu, and have a good night.